did you know about your character Walt Disney going into this project, and what were some new things you learned?
I had read a great biography of him literally in the 1970s, a book I checked out from the New York Public Library when I lived in New York and needed something to do because I was unemployed. So I had a pretty good knowledge of the history of him in the early days and the struggles that he had financing the earlier part of his career, which is actually really quite fascinating, and oddly enough figured in Saving Mr. Banks in the particular moment where he is throwing up his hands and saying, you know, I know how Pamela Travers feels. They once wanted to take the mouse away from me. I remember that story. Everything else from Walt Disney came from the own affection that I had as a kid watching him on TV every Sunday night. It was a big deal when Walt Disney, on the Walt Disney Sunday night TV show, talked about the new ride or the new attraction that was coming up in Disneyland. That was the greatest. That was the greatest hour of television, because here was describing something that if we were very, very lucky, we might get to go visit one of these days. It was absolutely magical. The things what I found out in the course of all the other research that I was able to do, thanks to Diane Disney Miller and the Family Museum, is understanding where he was at the time that Mary Poppins was made. He was really at the absolute pinnacle of his, what's the word? Odd to call it a career, but you know, he had already created the art form of the feature animated film, and he had invented Disneyland, and he was that odd and fascinating combination of artist and industrialist and businessman and dreamer that meant that he had the luxury at this time of truly just falling in love with the projects that he wanted to make. I mean, he had payrolls he had to meet and what have you, but at this point he learned how to make his dreams a reality. If it was just him drawing on a piece of paper and coming up with a talking mouse, or figuring out how to make a giant squid attack a submarine in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or how to build a fake castle in Anaheim, California. He had learned how to do all that, and so by the time he ran smack dab into the persnickety woman who didn't care about any of those accomplishments, he was taken aback, and I didn't realize that he was as thrown by Pamela Travers and his quest in order to make Mary Poppins as he was.
Was there a particular element of Walt Disney's personality that was difficult for you to portray, or one that was really easy for you to portray?
There's no easy or difficult in trying to make somebody, particularly a real human being that's as recognizable as Walt Disney was, into something that comes out of my face. You know, there's nothing simple about it. There's literally grunt work. There's a very specific, almost mathematical process of learning the cadence and the pronunciation of his flat Midwestern vocabulary and almost a dialect. And I work with a woman named Jessica Drake, who's helped me find the voice of quite a number of characters in other films. But there is however it translates to coming out of, you know, whatever specific countenance the actor offered. That is some sort of serendipitous thing that you just have to have faith in order to pursue. It's not easy, but when you get it, it's not hard, if that makes sense. You just do it, and it's just there.
Did you have any favorite scene in the movie, and if so, why?
I loved the big highlights of it are the first meeting, you know, going hand-to-hand combat with Emma as Pamela, which was one of the great attractions to doing it in the first place. There was a substantial story at the end of the film in which we were able to pepper with so much authenticity and so much true biological background that you find out stuff about Walt Disney that no one would ever known unless they had done a substantial amount of research. But I have to say my absolute favorite scene to shoot was recreating a moment from Walt Disney's Wide Wonderful World. I got to be Walt Disney talking to Tinkerbell at the beginning of one of those television shows, and that was an absolute dream come true. That was just a blast.